Good morning, students. So, welcome back after the short summer break that we had. I hope you are in touch with your studies and it's not that you are not revising. So, today we'll start with the rise of Chinese economy as part of your chapter Alternative Centers of Power, right? All right, so it's very interesting that we are continuing with we are starting with the Chinese economy, and China is very much in news these days as well. Okay, so here we'll try to understand how did the economy of China prospered so much. Okay, so here you will see, students, that until 1949, China was somehow not in a better condition. It was only in 1949 that its problem started to be worked upon. Why was that problem there? The problem was that until 1949, Japan occupied that region. Okay, and it withdrew only in 1945 when Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed. Okay. And then you see that there is a civil war that broke out in China between the communists and the national government. Okay, and the communist leader were led by leader Mao. Okay, so in 1949, the mainland China was under communism. And it was in this year that People's Republic of China was born. So gradually you'll understand and you'll see that China's economic success since 1978 has been linked to its rise as a great power. And China has been the fastest growing economy since the reforms first began over there. It has been projected to take over US by 2040, and that is why it is referred to as the driver of East Asian growth. Okay, because at that point of time, you see that the economy of China was devastated and Russia was helping China in those difficult years and in reviving its economy. Chinese leaders, they got completely involved in rebuilding the economy. Okay, and soon it became one of the rising powers of the world. Right? Is it clear till here? That was a short background I could give you. What were the problems that were existing in China before it started the reforms? Okay, and how it moved towards working upon its reforms, how it initiated it, what context was that? Okay. Now, we'll try to divide the growth of China in economic power into, let's say, 5 or 6 different points. First will be your fastest growing economy. Okay, so here you understand that since 1978, China started to rise as a great power. Okay, its success since 1978, it started to rise as a great power. It was projected to overtake US by 2040, and it is referred to as the driver of the East Asian growth. It was forecasted that it will overtake US. Right. Now, the strength of its economy, its power influence were basically onto few factors such as its population, its landmass, its resources, its regional location, and its political influence. Okay, next, the economic model of Russia. Try to understand this very easily, students. I have tried to divide it into the form of tables so that it becomes easy for you to understand this. Now, the economic model of China is such that People's Republic of China was born in 1949 following the Communist Revolution, right? I told you at the outset that how People's Republic of China was born and when it was born, okay? So the model that they followed was, I have also informed that Russia was helping China, so they followed the Soviet model. Okay, now communist China decided to cut all its ties with the capitalist world. Remember this, students, because it will be on the basis of this economic model that the further points that we will be discussing, you will be able to understand that. All right. So your first part within the growth of Chinese economy is your fastest growing economy. China as the fastest growing economy. Next is your economic model of China. Okay, where you see People's Republic of China was born, right? And Russia was helping China, so China followed the Soviet model. Okay, following this, communist China decided to cut all its ties with the capitalist world, and thus it chose isolation. Okay, then it aimed to create state-owned heavy sector. Right, now how to create that? This was to be done from the capital that it will get from the agriculture. Okay, now after this, as it was lack of foreign exchange, as there was lack of foreign exchange that it needed to buy technology and goods. So here what China decided was to substitute the imports by the domestic goods. It decided to not take the imports, to not allow the imports, rather to use its domestic goods. Okay, so basically China is trying here to get dependent on nobody, rather take as much productivity as possible from its own land, from its domestic atmosphere, right? So I hope this is clear to the model, the economic model that China actually wanted to follow, decided on to follow. Okay, next, third is your resultant growth from this economic model. How far did this economic model actually work? So here, industrial economy was to be established on a large scale. Okay, economic growth grew at a rate of 5 to 6% decently. Please ignore the spelling over here, students, that is somehow by mistake. So economic growth grew at a rate of 5 to 6% decently with that economic model. Employment and social welfare was also assured, right? But what actually here worked was there were certain areas that still improved, and these areas were employment, education, health and social welfare. So all of these areas actually improved. Fine, I hope it is clear. Industry was working, economic growth also worked well, employment was also generated, which means that work life, academic life, that is education, health sector, social welfare sector, all was working very good. So what actually did not work was the rise in population. Due to the rise in population, there was demand, more demands of the people. So rise in population meant that economic growth was insufficient to meet the needs of the people. Okay, and the crisis was the slow industrial production, right? There was low per capita income. There were minimal international trade. So due to these three crises, the economic model did not work that well as it was expected to do. Okay, students? Now, the next here is the policy decisions that China took. On what it actually failed in this economic model, right? So what China decided here was in 1970s. In 1970s, there were major policy decisions that was taken and that was announced by China. What was that? In 1972, China decided to establish relations with the United States of America. And what you studied before was China here decided to cut all its ties with the capitalist world and it chose isolation. And here in 1972, China established its relations with the United States of America and there was an end of isolation. Okay? Now, here it chose four modernizations. It chose modernizations in four areas. Premier Zhou Enlai proposed the four modernizations in the field of agriculture, industry, science, and technology. Okay, along with it, military as well. By 1978, the then leader, Deng Xiaoping, announced the next policy. That is your open door policy and economic reforms in China, and the policy was to generate higher productivity by investments of capital and technology from abroad. And here this open door policy, this announcement actually was referred to as the second revolution in China, students. Okay, and with those four modernization, Premier Zhou Enlai, he said that China should turn into a powerful socialist country. Okay, now for a shock therapy, right? China had its own path in introducing a market economy. What was that? First, there was privatization of agriculture in 1982, right? This was followed by privatization in industry in 1998. Okay, now with this, there was elimination of trade barriers in special economic zones. I have told you that China ended its isolation. Now, when it decided to open its economy, it decided to also eliminate the trade barriers in the special economic zones. But it was only eliminated in the special economic zones. Now, what is this special economic zones? Students, these are the business and trade laws where in special economic zones, the business and the trade laws are different from the rest of the country. Okay, so here the trade barriers were eliminated. Now, naturally, with privatization of agriculture, in 1982, there was rise in the agricultural production, which led to the growth in the rural industry. Clear? Next, with the elimination of the trade barriers in special economic zones, there was rise in foreign trade. Since there was rise in foreign trade, there was also rise in the foreign exchange, in the foreign investment, that is your foreign direct investment. Now, how was the rise in rural industry took place? The rural incomes of the peasants increased. Peasants worked on collective fields, but rural economy went down. So collective farming was abolished, and that is how there was rise in the agricultural production. Because peasants now became owners of their own land and they sold their products at market prices. Industrialists were given concessions. There were more FDIs, especially there were investors from United States of America. And you see, students, that by 2006, China accumulated too much of foreign exchange reserves exceeding $820 billion. And that is how there was new shape that was given to the world economic order because of elimination of trade barriers in special economic zones, because special economic zone was open. It was open for the foreign investors. There were more investments, and China's accession to World Trade Order in 2001, China opened its economy to many other new areas as well. Right? And that is how China rose as a power. But with this, there are certain demerits as well that is associated. Now, what were the demerits? The demerits over here are, number one, you have unemployment. There was rise in the unemployment. China's reforms did benefit many, but there are certain demerits as well. Number one, there was rise in unemployment with nearly 100 million people looking for jobs. There were bad condition of work. There was environmental degradation, rise in economic inequality, and there was corruption. But there was certain influence as well. These are your influence, these are your demerits. What was the influence of China while it was rising as a power? Naturally, there would be the economic rise of power. So China became rather a country that rose economically. The integration of China's economy, the interdependency that this has created, it enabled China to have influence with its trade partners. There was a fear that China's rise might also have been mitigated by its contributions to the stability of the ASEAN economies, its outward-looking investments, its policies in Latin America and Africa. All these increasingly showed that China is rising as a global player for developing economies. Right? And we cannot, no matter what strategy it is following, we cannot deny the fact that China is a major threat today for the developing, for the developed, both the worlds. Right? And that is how China has built up its economy so strong. Okay, now, so moving on to Indo-China relations. Now, students, India and China were great powers in Asia before the advent of Western imperialism. Now, at different times in China's long history of dynastic rule, you see Mongolia, Korea, parts of Indochina, and Tibet accepted China's authority. Various kingdoms and empires in India also, they have extended their influence beyond their borders. But there was very much limited political and cultural interactions between the two countries. The confrontation between the two actually started in 20th century when both nations came in front of each other, evolving a foreign policy to deal with each other, but that was difficult. After India regained its independence from Britain and China expelled the foreign powers, then there was the hope that both would come together to shape the future of the developing world. And it was so much in good relation with each other that Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai was a very much popular slogan to address the relation of India and China. But the military conflict over the border issues started between the two, especially for the takeover of Tibet in 1950s and the final settlement of the Sino-Indian border. Then you see that China and India were involved in a border conflict that took place in 1962. Very famous war, and one of the considered wrong move taken by India in the history of international politics, students, over competing territorial claims in Arunachal Pradesh and Aksai Chin region of Ladakh. Okay, so these two border issues, these two wars shattered the hopes that the two countries would come together to shape the future of the developing world. Now students, if you see the map over here, I have tried to make you clear which is the Aksai Chin area. Okay, you can easily understand how are we trying to not to be in conflict with China actually, but how every other time China is so close to India and how the issue actually starts. Okay, the area of Tibet, the area of Aksai Chin, the Ladakh region, and how this whole area is actually very much controversial. This whole part is actually very much controversial. You see Pakistan over here, the Azad Kashmir here. Here you have the Siachen Glacier. This is India occupied since 1984. right? There is no defined boundary over here, and this part, this lined part, if you see this part, this is a territory ceded by Pakistan to China in 1963 and claimed by India. Okay, here you have the Aksai Chin. So such is the difficult situation that exists between India and China. Okay, next, what happened and how the relations changed? The change in relations, actually the conflict of 1962, in which India suffered a lot, it brought long-term implications for Indo-China relations. The diplomatic relations between the two countries, they were downgraded until 1976. And after that, the relations between the two countries began to improve with the change of Chinese leadership. The policies became more pragmatic, less ideological. And they were prepared to put off the settlement of the contentious issues while improving the relations with India. And there were a series of talks to resolve the border issue that also took place in 1981. Post-Cold War, that is after the Cold War, the relations between the two became more strategic. It became more strategic as well as economic. It got an economic dimension as well. Both started to view themselves as a rising power. One of the basic reasons for competitions, right? So both the countries, they started looking at themselves as the rising power. Both have cooperated. Since the 1988 Rajiv Gandhi's visit in the areas of conflict, okay, Rajiv Gandhi's visit to China in December 1988 provided the main reason for the improvement in the Indo-China relations, because both the governments took measures to contain the conflict and to maintain peace and tranquility on the borders. They signed various agreements on cultural exchanges. They cooperated in the fields of science, trade, technology. Bilateral trade also increased between the two nations. Right after the post-Cold War. So students, there has been issues like China's support to Pakistan's nuclear program. Now here you see that India's nuclear test in 1998 is considered to be justified, because then at that point of time the countries were the developing world were not allowed to go for a nuclear test, okay, because it was considered dangerous. But India's nuclear test in 1998 sometimes is considered to be justified because there are grounds of threat from China. It is true that China was seen as contributing to the buildup of Pakistan's nuclear program. China's military relations with Bangladesh and Myanmar was viewed as hostile to the Indian interest. But these issues did not lead to any further conflict, as talks of cooperations were continuously there. There has been increased transportation, there has been common interest, there has been global concerns, which has helped to build a positive relation between the two. But in the current times, if you see, to be more updated, right, in the current times, as for your knowledge rather, the clash between India and China has been there. It has been for Pangong Lake very recently, and at present also, just few days before, the situation along the Galwan Valley is tensed due to the intense face-off between the Sino-Indian security forces. And this has claimed 40 to 60 casualties. As per reports, 20 Indians and 43 Chinese. So the situation is very tensed. Now at present, it is never suggested that war is a favored option. Right, so war is not a situation, but both the countries have said that if the security of the country is at stake, then there are answers that are ready on both the sides. And we are very much matured enough to understand how and what. Right, so the war is though not a favored option, but there are situations which might lead to another face-off. So all we can hope is for a better relation between the two countries, right? Okay, students, with this, your Indo-China relations, the rise of Chinese economy is over. as prescribed in your book, NCERT book, your syllabus for alternative center of power. We have done with EU, we are done with ASEAN, we are done with China. Now, as per your syllabus, you have to study another topic, that is BRICS. Okay, we will start with BRICS in the next class. Okay, so I'll stop here for the day. If you have any problem till here, you will ask. Okay, and you'll continue to do your assignment, students. All right. Okay, thank you so much.